Want to hear something amazing? Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year automatically, with no limit on how much you can earn. How amazing is that? In fact, it's even more amazing because of all the places where Discover is accepted. 99% of places in the U.S. that take credit cards. So when it comes to Discover, get used to hearing yes more often. Learn more at discover.com/yes. 2021 Nielsen Report. Limitations apply.
This is the Rich Eisen Show.
You don't have that like bookmarked at the top of your top of your Chrome?
Live from the Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
Man of his word. I will take less. I will help the team. I want to keep playing. Voila.
The Rich Eisen Show with guest host Ryan Leaf. And now, sitting in for Rich, it's Ryan Leaf.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Rich Eisen Show, hour number 2. Rich and the boys are out on vacation, 4th of July weekend. Calls in the righty. Ryan, can you get in here for me? It's a bromance, everybody. We've developed a bromance. I love it. I love that he supports me this way and gives me the platform and opportunity to do this. Just got done talking to John Keim, ESPN DC reporter, about the Washington football situation, the investigation, and the sanctions that were levied down. All about money. $10 million. Speaking about money, Michael McCann, Sports Illustrated legal expert, joins us now to fill us all in and educate me on the name, image, and likeness policy that was invoked at midnight on July 1st. Welcome to the show, Michael McCann. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us. This for me was always a no-brainer. It was inevitable, just the evolution of everything. When I played in 1994 to 1997, didn't even cross my mind, right? When I saw my jersey hanging in the bookstore and people wearing it around, I just thought, damn, that's so cool. Or my likeness on a video game, the NCAA football video game. I just thought that was really cool. But people realize, how much money is being generated. And the NCAA, after being spurned by the Supreme Court, had no other decision than to approve an interim policy that removes the restrictions from athletes hoping to earn unprecedented money.
Yeah, I mean, the NCAA was really in a bind, and obviously, Ryan, you had a tremendous college career and the chance to go pro afterwards, but think of all your teammates who were just a notch below you, right, that never had the pro career but were really good in college that could have generated significant earnings while in school. They're one chance to make money essentially in their sport. So this will open the door for athletes, football players, but gymnasts and others, especially those with significant social media followings. And as you noted, the NCAA was in a tough spot after the Supreme Court's unanimous ruling. The NCAA could have gone to court in every state where an NIL statute was going to take effect on July 1 or governor's executive order, but that was, I think, about 14 states, and they'd have to get a restraining order in every state. It just would have been real tough for them to pull that off, and they obviously weren't in the fighting mood after the Supreme Court ruling, so they capitulated. They allowed a policy that for years they had opposed, and now in every state, college athletes can sign endorsement deals, but also do things like sponsor camps and get paid to do an autograph and things that may not make a ton of money but provide some money for them.
Yeah, I talked about it all week on my radio show about how after my scholarship check, if my parents wouldn't have helped me pay my rent in college, I would have had no money. There was no way for me to take a job. There was no way for me to afford anything else. So for those of you that think this is about millions and millions of dollars, it's not. This could literally be about $250 a month extra for guys and gals who are living on campus that will help them through a month with food and other things there, just to enjoy themselves while they're in college. It's something that was inevitable, and it was something that had to come down the pipe.
Yeah, and like you said, it could be $250. I mean, we're seeing a lot of companies get pretty good publicity, probably for what they're spending on an endorsement, by linking up with athletes who maybe aren't well known outside of their college campus. I've seen a number of athletes who I admit I haven't really heard of before until seeing that they sign these deals. And I think that that's just a sign about how there are so many different opportunities for different athletes, even if they're not huge names, even if they're not on ESPN and not going to a pro league draft, they still may have value or at least sort of attraction in their communities, or they've somehow cultivated a big following on social media. We know that those with significant Instagram following amounts have done really well so far. So, yeah, it'll be a new set of opportunities that will reward different kinds of athletes than we're used to seeing rewarded.
I think a lot of people saw this as a doomsday. I think anybody does. People fear the unknown. They fear change. It always is. This has always worked our whole life. This is what college, the sanctity of college football or college athletics and the amateurism part of it. No matter how some of the tragic stories of people losing eligibility and abilities to be a part of their team, or losing, let's say, the Heisman Trophy, like Reggie Bush, whose family was compensated for what his son's name, image, and likeness was about. For those people out there that see this as a doomsday, you probably have a better understanding that this isn't going to be as lucrative as a lot of people think. There may be a few players. You talked about me during my time in college. I had a pro career after that. There are others who their highest possible marketability may be during those 4 years in college, and now their ability to maximize that, to profit off that, can be really life-changing. It could give you a job out of college. It could give you a purpose moving forward. These are a lot of positives that can lead these young men and women out of college than before they didn't have.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because it's easy to dwell on, you were the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, right? You were a superstar in college. What about the others? What about those that don't have that sort of projection after school into a pro career? And this will allow those athletes chances that they literally will have no chance to make money on sports other than while in college, because it will end when college ends. And, the doomsday sort of fear, one is that I just don't think it's true at all. I think most fans will be okay with college athletes signing endorsement deals or getting paid to sponsor a camp back home, doing things like that. That is hardly sort of a major transformation of college sports, at least in my view. And the other thing is this. These college athletes already have a right of publicity. If you're an American, you have a right to make money on your identity. It's why cheerleaders, why esports players, why musicians, actors, artists, all of them could be college students, are able to make money because they have some special skill. And college athletes are in the same boat. It's only NCAA rules that have suppressed that right. So I would look at it, for those worried about it, it's really about liberty. It's about sort of an American value that we're able to control our identity. So I would view it consistent with how things have been for a long time. In a way, it's almost going back in time to the way it would be, but for NCAA rules that entered the story.
We're speaking with Michael McCann, Sports Illustrated legal expert. This for me, I think, is phenomenal for local businesses. Like in these small college towns, you're talking about Norman, Oklahoma, Pullman, Washington, Madison, Wisconsin. These are small college towns that have local businesses that can get a ton more advertising. And this is what we're talking about. Now, we're not talking about the national social media platforms that if you have a followership, you're going to be able to monetize yourself. The Cameo.com of the world, where you're able to go on after a big game and have people pay for you to smack talk to the rival you just beat and things like that. Those are the things that are outside of this. But I really think local businesses for these small communities really can benefit from this. Not necessarily because they don't have to, whatever their marketing budget is, it's limited, but they can help out these players, to your point, that may not be the superstars, but to help bring people in. Because when you're in a small college town, it doesn't matter. You can be the star of the football team as long as you are wearing that A on the side of your helmet in Tuscaloosa, or that number on the side of your helmet in Tuscaloosa. You're a star. You're a star in that town. You're a star in that state because there's no pro football team or anything like that. So I think this could be very, very good for local businesses being able to stay open in those local communities.
Yeah, and Ryan, you got to think there's a great bang for your buck with doing that, right? Because now when they do these deals, they get put on social media. Look at the deal they signed with so-and-so. It's probably hard for them to get that kind of traction through any other advertising. I wonder what it costs to do that versus paying for an ad on Google. It may be they save money doing this, and they sort of build goodwill by saying we're helping out a college student. There's a very good narrative, like you talked about, for local businesses to probably not spend a lot of money and get a really good bang for the buck and help out a student who otherwise, could be in a position where they need some money, and this is a way of providing it.
We're talking with Michael Mann, Sports Illustrated legal expert. Okay, we farmed out the positives. Now let's do the devil's advocate here, and where can this be compromised? Is there a booster that simply doesn't? They take one picture of a star recruit outside his Chevy dealership and give him, $100,000 to essentially come to, the University of Oklahoma. Is that how this goes? Are there going to be some compliance in place to like, hey, that's not worth the market value? $100,000 for him to stand in front of your truck and be on a billboard is not worth that. But who's to say what a businessman believes a worth of a marketing concept could be? I mean, who's going to have compliance over this and keep this in the straight and narrow?
Yeah, Florida's NIL statute has a market analysis component that's supposed to address that, to make sure that it isn't an endorsement that's camouflaging pay for play. Right. Like you just said, if say it's 100 times the market value, that would seem like not an endorsement, but really paying them to stay at a school or come to a school. But although even that Florida statute doesn't really explain how it's enforced. So I think this will be an issue for compliance folks. And right now there isn't a good setup because the NCAA rules, the interim policy talks about not allowing that, but it doesn't say what happens. It doesn't say how do you decide what's an exaggerated market value versus what the real market value would be. I think it's going to be trial and error for a while, and I think those who are doing compliance at universities are in for a tough several months ahead. They're going to be busy. And I'm sure, look at it this way, how many of them were notified about their athletes signing endorsement deals? There were some announced literally right after midnight on Wednesday. I mean, I guess they were in touch, right? I mean, so it's already moving past the compliance folks, and I'm sure they're going to try to unwind that a bit. But it is what it is. I mean, this is the NCAA waited a dozen years. The Ed O'Bannon case began in 2009, so this was not a new issue for the NCAA. They waited until the end, and when you wait until the end, usually you don't produce your best product. So the set of rules that are in place have some gaps.
We're talking with Michael McCann from Sports Illustrated. He's their legal expert. So we saw a lot of former players come out in the last few days and talk about what it would have meant for them. Also, the NCAA and some of the sanctions placed on these players who were found to have committed some issues. If you recall, Johnny Manziel was suspended for half of his first game because he was supposedly signed autographs for money. The biggest one out there is Reggie Bush was stripped of his Heisman Trophy, who has been more of an electrifying college football player than Reggie Bush over the last, 4 decades. It's been him. And the NCAA has simply acquiesced to this process, but it's not like they're looking at anything that happened in the past that's grandfathered in is going to make any difference to them. What is your thought process on that? We look at some of the criminal aspect of things when laws are changed, and the fortitude that these people have gone through to wait and watch something like marijuana legalized somewhere and having spent 10 years in prison because it was illegal during their time. Your thought process around records and guys that were institutionally kicked out because of similar things that are going into effect now as legal.
Yeah, this is something I've written about a lot of times over the years, and I was with Sports Illustrated. I'm now with Sportico, which is a sports business publication. But to your point, this is the issue of what happens when rules change and all the things that were in the past, like you talked about. Reggie Bush example, I think, is the top of the list. He's literally probably the most prominent college football player, at least that I can recall, in the last 2 decades. I think in terms of his impact, in terms of his recognition, what he would have made with name, image, and likeness probably eclipses certainly anyone in recent years. I know there have been others. Vince Young was one, another big player, but I've got to think he's at the top of the list. I think the short answer is he's sort of in a tough spot because it's hard to – at the time, those were the rules,
right.
And the NCAA hasn't retroactively said we're going to go back. And I think it's just – I know he's already criticized. I think he said, where's my Heisman or something to that effect. It's a fair point, but I don't think there's a legal claim because at the time those were the rules. And your point about marijuana, how people have been put in prison for marijuana, now states are allowing it. It sort of is what it is. That laws changed, and unfortunately, those in the past were
life isn't fair.
A different set of rules. Yeah, life isn't fair.
It's how you deal with it. Before we get you out of here, who do you think takes advantage of this most? Do you think it's going to be the star quarterback on a big time football team, or do you think it's going to be an obscure, maybe Olympic sport, and probably from the female sporting side because of the platforms that exist nowadays, like TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and things like that, where that's where somebody's going to take advantage of this the most?
So I still think sort of the star quarterback or the Zion Williamson scenario, it's sort of the very elite in men's football, football or men's basketball probably has a leg up just because of marketability. But I think what we're in terms of making the most, my guess is that they're still going to do the best with name, image, and likeness. But I think what we'll see, to your point, is that there are going to be a wide spectrum of athletes who do very well with name, image, and likeness, and including Olympic sports, and including those that have created a following on Instagram and TikTok and other social media platforms, that they're going to be in a position now to get paid or do Cameo and things like that. So I also think as fans, as consumers, we're going to learn about more athletes than we're used to. Right. That the average fan will now see individuals that we haven't necessarily been following. So it's probably going to help educate the world on sports too.
Well, we were speaking with Michael McCann from you said Sportico, right? That's where you moved on to. Legal analyst there. We want to thank you for your time educating all of us. I kind of like the idea that, back in the day I could have made some cash, and knowing that I didn't, I'm not disappointed. I loved my time in college. So I appreciate you taking the time today to educate us today, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Have a great day. Michael McCann, everybody, from Sportico, legal analyst, filling us all in on NIL, name, image, and likeness at the collegiate level. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Cynthia Freeland, who's going to be our next guest, talked to me a little bit about it yesterday. Very interested to see what that looks like in terms of data analytics, especially for guys that are going to make the jump to the next spot, which is what she covers at the NFL Network. She'll join us here in about 5 minutes from the NFL Network. Again, Cynthia Freeland. We'll talk to her about that and more here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'm Ryan Leaf, filling in for Rich and the boys. We'll be back in a little bit. Thanks.
Want to hear something amazing? Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year automatically, with no limit on how much you can earn. How amazing is that? In fact, it's even more amazing because of all the places where Discover is accepted. 99% of places in the U.S. that take credit cards. So when it comes to Discover, get used to hearing yes more often. Learn more at discover.com/yes. 2021 Nielsen Report. Limitations apply.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Rich Eisen Show. I am not Rich Eisen. I am Ryan Leaf, filling in for the big fella today. He is off today and Monday for this 4th of July celebratory weekend, as well as the boys are. Needed some much-needed rest. They call in the righty to fill in for these couple days. Happy to do it, as always. Love the platform that Rich offers me. And we welcome in a definite friend of the show, definite friend of mine, from the NFL Network, Cynthia Freeland, data analytics expert, joins us here on the Rich Eisen Show. Good morning, Cynthia. How you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. As always, we love it. There's so much we can get into you with. I just got off the phone with Michael McCann, legal expert from Sportico, around the NIL. And when you and I talked yesterday about coming on the show, you were really interested in how this was going to look and what kind of data analytics this will add up to. Talk to us a little bit about what you think and what makes you so interested in this NIL and what the collegiate model is going to look like.
Well, I just got back from a coaches summit where I gave an analytics presentation, but then got to listen to some really very amazing speakers from our Athletes First family talk about their experiences as athletic directors, and a bunch of college coaches were there too, talking about what kind of changes they're already seeing. And it was kind of super timely because, as the floodgates turned on yesterday, we don't really know what we're going to see, but a lot of sponsorships were already teed up. So I think that what's really interesting here is going to be the flow of kind of what's going to happen to schools like the ones I went to, Boston College and Northwestern, where, you're in big cities. Their program has some academic standards that are sometimes more difficult to get in because the population of students isn't very big. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all of that. And, kind of at that same time, then how it impacts what we see going into the NFL, because now you have players who are used to having more autonomy and power, and what are their expectations going to be as they enter the league?
I was thinking about what that would have looked like for me, Cynthia, 25 years ago. I just didn't care. Like, if they told us we had to play 17 games, I would have been, hell yeah. If they told me, or the first time I ever saw my jersey up in the bookstore being sold and people at games walking around with it, and me on a video game being represented with the number 16 of Washington State, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Is it just the evolution? People evolve, understand that they're being essentially taken advantage of. I was always just so blessed that I got to go to college for free, that it didn't cost my parents anything. Then I got to play football. Is it just a different perspective and people being in your ear and hearing it all the time that, hey, I'm owed this because of what my worth is in terms of what every other student on campus is able to do?
Well, let me ask you a question. How many Twitter followers did you have at that time? Because I didn't have Twitter in college, and I went to college after you. And ultimately, they don't know now what it's like to, like, the world that you and I grew up in is not what they're growing up in now. So it's kind of their expectation. And I don't believe that they shouldn't be paid in some form. I just think it's going to be interesting to see as the kind of Adam Smith invisible hand economics theory sort of takes over and you start to see things redistribute, like all the different monetary aspects of it. It's going to be funky, and it's going to introduce a lot of places where there's some exploitation. I hate the idea of like swarmy agents negotiating stuff and these kids having no idea what like the tax implications. Like, right. These aren't sexy things to talk about, but they're real things. Like, you and I know we have to pay our taxes every single year. And, when you're 18 and you're in college and you have, the first time living away from home, and you've got an entire football season to think about and all the different meetings and schedules and everything. And then on top of that, there's just, I don't know, it just seems like there's a lot of opportunities for some jerks to try to capitalize off of, people who don't have experience understanding this world.
Well, what I assume is going to happen, and which I would suggest, is that these players are going to need to set up LLCs or S corps and to help with their taxability situation. I mean, that's the best way to go about it, because essentially they're becoming a company. That's what they're trying to do. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I had an agent show up. Agents were trying to sign me for when my post-college career happened, and yeah, there was a sleaziness to it. And when you're a college kid, you're like, you feel like you're unbreakable, that you're invincible, and so whatever you want to do, you roll with the punches, especially when you don't have any money. That when people come along and start floating money in front of you, young kids don't know anything other than, oh wow, I could have a car or a new stereo in my house. That's pretty great.
Yeah, and well, if you think about it, additionally, this just shows me from a business standpoint that the NCAA waited way too long. They kept thinking, oh, this isn't going to happen. This is poor leadership from the NCAA, because there's going to be so many traps right now that people are going to fall into. Like, who's to say what someone can pimp or not, right? Like, who's gonna be the first guy that tries to do something with porn? Like, I don't want to solve those problems. I'm so glad I work in the NFL and not in NCAA. Right. So, like, I don't have I just don't have to solve that.
Right. OnlyFans. I think that's. I just learned about that.
Oh
this
yeah,
year.
I forgot about. I didn't even know what that was until like a month ago. So I was like, oh, from watching
old.
TV, I had to Google it. Don't
We're
Google
old.
it. Just
We're old,
don't.
Cynthia. That's. But guess what? Cynthia Freeland, everybody from the NFL Network, ran a Did you run a marathon just recently?
Yeah, I did in Duluth, Minnesota, which was like the most charming place. It was. I'm going to tell you, if you're considering a marathon, it's called Grandma's Marathon, and it's so charming. You ride a train to the start. Everyone's super nice. It's great. I would highly recommend. Well,
my family's from Minnesota, and I know Duluth really well. So, yes, I know how charming it can be. The running the 23 point whatever miles part of it, I'll take the train while you do it. I'll be a part of the charmingness of Duluth with you, but I don't think I'm going to run the marathon.
You know, my two favorite other than I loved running the Chicago and the New York marathons, but my two favorite non-big city marathons have been Duluth and Missoula, Montana. So I feel like it's a connection we have. We like
we're folksy.
Your Montana backgrounds and Minnesota.
Yeah, we're folksy. We're folksy folks here living in Los Angeles. You on the beach, me in Beverly Hills. I mean, come on. Look how far we've come, Cynthia. Cynthia Freeland, everybody from the NFL Network, data analytics expert. Everybody wants to know about the NFL season coming up. You've been on top of it all in terms of analytics. One of the interesting ones I read about you recently is the conversation you had about the Bears' decision to draft Justin Fields. And after you interviewed several NFL teams, in particular 16 of them, and they talked to you about their actual grades, this Justin Fields move by the Bears to move up to 11 to get him fit in with a lot of expectations of what scouts had for this young man out of Ohio State.
I feel like about a quarter of the league, about 8 coaches I spoke to, now I've canvassed, I think I've gotten to all 32 now. So 8, like, of the guys I trust the most, coaches, scouts, like people who have been right, they have good track records. They have all said they had Justin Fields rated even higher than Trevor Lawrence, which was, surprising to me just because I feel like we've been hearing about Trevor Lawrence for like 4 years now. Like, this guy, Trevor Lawrence, he's going to be great. And this is not to take anything away from Lawrence. It's just that, you just, when you hear about something so much and then they're like, no, Fields, it also always, as you know, depends on where you end up going. And I think it's a great fit with Matt Nagy. And by the way, Ryan Pace, they both need to make sure that they want some job security. Like, they need to make this work. So I think everyone's sufficiently motivated to kind of get it together.
You looked at a lot of schedules, in particular teams that are expected to finish high in next year's NFL season. One of them is the Green Bay Packers. First off there, the variable in all your models has to it blows up completely, and you have to recalculate if the reigning MVP and future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers, calls the Packers bluff and doesn't show up and play. What that looks like. You talked about a stretch in games weeks 7 through 10 where they have a very difficult stretch. That would be the time that he is obligated to come back if he wants the season to count in terms of his contract. Where are we at with that? And if he doesn't come back, if he's not part of this Green Bay Packers team, what does that open up to the NFC North end? Does the Minnesota Vikings then and the Chicago Bears become the teams that you're looking for? Because the Packers just have to slide down the list if their star quarterback doesn't go. Of course, it's better for both the Vikings and the Bears, and the Bears kind of specifically, just kind of based on the dynamic of the schedule. But let's be honest, it actually also really benefits the NFC West, who plays the entire NFC North. But remember, that's a really difficult division to begin with because all 4 of those teams have something to like and something to prove. So when I look to see kind of where the biggest uptick, it was like NFC West teams, like 3 of them make it to the post. It's amazing. So it was kind of cool to see how that impacted it. I actually, for the first time ever, believe Aaron Rodgers won't play. Like, really?
I think I don't know. I mean, look, I don't have any exceptional insight other than what has already been reported. It just feels like he feels like he's a very principled person, and I feel like he's not. I just don't know if I think he's bluffing. Like, I just think he's. You like to look into little things. Your little data points and things like that. I can give you the lone reason why he is coming back next year. You want to hear it? He re-upped his membership at Milwaukee Country Club. But like,
you don't do that. You don't do that if you're not going to be in Milwaukee. That's just now. Hey, if he's willing to walk away for millions and millions of dollars, re-upping an annual membership at a country club probably isn't, is probably chump change for him. But that for me is meaningful. That's a data point right now I want you to give a ton of credence to when you put it into your next model, all right?
Here's my question. Was it on auto renew, or did he have to did he have to opt in, or did he just forget to auto renew it? Because that's the real question right there.
You have to, with at least for all the country clubs I've been, you had to make that decision either in voice person or electronically, not just auto renew. So this was a conscious choice on his part, and his new fiance and him will be back in Green Bay. They will be leading this Green Bay Packers team. I would put it at, because I'm with you on a lot of things. I think he is very principled. I feel like if he feels slighted in any way, shape, or form, he is a very, very good grudge holder. I'm placing it at 75-25 right now. 75 he plays, 25% he doesn't.
I mean, you're probably more right than me, but for whatever reason, I just feel like he said it, and unless Gutekunst gets fired, then he's not coming back. I don't know.
At what point, Cynthia, I mean, you covered this from a different angle at the NFL Network. At what point is it when they start losing games that Aaron Rodgers becomes the villain? Because the more and more we get to it with less things that have been leaked out, it just can't be that they didn't discuss it with him, that they cut a player that he was friendly with. Those seem rather petty for somebody who's made $240+ million in his career playing football, and you have somebody making the league minimum who's trying to fight his tail off to go to a Super Bowl, and the guy that was going to lead him it looks like a petulant child going into the year. I mean, at what point does he become the villain to fans, and how does it affect his legacy?
So now this is a very small sample size, but in Duluth, there happen to be more Packers fans than Vikings fans for whatever reason. It's actually closer to Door County than I thought. So when I was talking to some people, they're already over it. Like they're kind of like moving on. Like they were not expecting him to come back, and they're not really mad at him. They're just kind of like, okay, next. It's amazing.
Wow.
It was amazing. So I also don't think
I really feel like I have much more invested in this than these fans in Duluth, Minnesota, which makes me feel like
so kind.
Right.
They're just so kind. They're like, okay, what's next? Jordan Love.
All right.
Okay, let's go.
All right, we're talking to Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network, data analytics expert, friend of the show. Some of these choices in this year's draft, in particular for me, and you know my what I like in terms of how you draft players and how you pick them in free agency. I love passers. I love guys that protect the passer, and I love guys that rush the passer. That's how you build a team. The Bengals at 5 had a wonderful shot to take an offensive lineman to protect their franchise quarterback, Joe Burrow, who last year was let down by that liability, the offensive line, and had a horrific knee injury that he's had to battle back from this year. Instead, the team goes out and gets Jamar Chase, one of the best wide receivers in this year's draft, instead of Penei Sewell, who would then fall to the Detroit Lions, who were ecstatic to get him. Your thoughts on taking a Ferrari like that rather than the minivan that can protect your franchise?
As much as I'd like to take the Ferrari and as much as I'd like to be like, I can't wait, that'd be awesome. There's no way if I would have had anything to do with any draft or anything that they were doing in their draft board. I understand making Joe Burrow happy by reuniting him with Jamar Chase, but there's no way in heck that I would have ever signed off on that pick over Penei Sewell. There's just you have Joe Burrow. He got injured last year. You know this very well. Like you can't expect Joe Burrow to, if he's going to get hit all that many times. That's not going to. It's just a bad recipe. It's a bad recipe for connecting on passes. And by the way, that's how people get hurt. So I don't want anything to do with that. I like Jamar Chase. It's nothing personal against Jamar Chase at all. I just think you got to protect. You got to do whatever you can to protect Joe Burrow, and they did not do enough this offseason to in any way convince me that taking Jamar Chase was a better choice than taking Penei Sewell, who was absolutely gigantic.
Yeah, went through a deep dive last night on the 2017 NFL draft, because this is really the time that you examine drafts, really about 4 years after, because all those people examining them right after the fact, you have no idea how this is going to play out. Yeah. And if you go and look at the 2017 draft, the amount of running backs that were selected in the late rounds that have been successful. Aaron Jones was picked like 210th. Alvin Kamara in the third round. I mean, it's unbelievable. It really showcases that. I just implore teams who have first-round picks, when they have positions on their team they need to address. Yes, running back was one of them for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I love Najee Harris. But they didn't have – their whole offensive line is gone, and they have a 55-year-old quarterback sitting back there that can't move, and you go get a running back that's not going to help you because there's no holes to run through. So, I keep imploring this. You and I have had this conversation plenty of times. I'm very adamant about – and I'm a huge Steelers fan, so now I'm upset about it all too, because I'm like, I love Najee Harris. He does amazing things. He's an amazing player. But, what's he going to be to this Pittsburgh Steelers team that doesn't have an offensive line because they didn't address that in the draft or in free agency?
Well, they had a very bad free agency situation from a cap standpoint, so that was in part why I understand taking Najee Harris, because, they're trying to really figure out this quick scheme and these quick passes. And, obviously last year we saw Ben Roethlisberger just change his entire style, and then teams caught up to it. So I'm completely with you. I mean, the O-line, if you're picking where they were picking, you knew you weren't going to get a good, there were a lot of O-linemen in this draft, but you weren't going to get a good selection of like maybe the one that you particularly wanted. Right. So I think they should have created this, like I said, in free agency, you got to figure out at least a base of your O-line. Can't let everyone walk in free agency. So I'm completely with you. I didn't know you were just a Steelers fan. That's my takeaway from this situation. Really? But it's nothing against Najee Harris. It's just I don't think he's going to live up to what they need him to do.
Terry Bradshaw was my hero. I loved the black and yellow. Grew up with it. Born in 1976. Watched. I don't remember them winning titles, but I remember when family brought back the old Iron City beer cans that were pictures of the teams, and they were just plastered all over my bedroom growing up. So,
you got the 05-06 Super Bowl.
Yes. I also have the heartache of being in college when they lost to the Dallas Cowboys when Rod Woodson came back from the ACL injury.
Rod Woodson's one of my favorite human beings, ever. He's great.
I played against him when he was with the Baltimore Ravens on that Super Bowl team led by Ray Lewis. They were unbelievable. It was sometimes when I played professional football, I was the kid in Montana growing up watching these guys. I remember when I played against Steve Young and Dan Marino the first time. I was just like I went up and asked them for their autographs after the game. It was odd. It was odd. Probably a big reason why I wasn't incredibly successful when I competed against those guys. But
no, I like that. That's endearing.
Yes. All right, Cynthia, as always, thank you for joining us. You are the absolute best. I can't wait to see you again soon. It's been a while.
I know. We gotta go out and play some golf before the season starts back up.
I like it. All right, everybody. Cynthia Freeland, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network, everybody. Data analytics expert. She's locked in. She teaches us a lot from different angles of the NFL concepts. Really like that. Really like her input. When we come back, we'll talk about the NBA a little bit. We'll talk about a few of the topics that we talked about at the beginning of the show. And then we'll welcome in Kevin Arnowitz at the top of the hour, ESPN NBA writer, to talk about the NBA playoffs and when we get to the NBA Finals. You're listening to The Rich Eisen Show here on Westwood One. I'm Ryan Lee, filling in for Rich. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to The Rich Eisen Show. I am Ryan Lee, filling in for Rich on this Friday, July 2nd, as he and his team are taking a well-deserved vacation break from the show over this 4th of July weekend. They called the righty. I step in for him anytime he needs it. Love the platform that he affords me. We've had a great show. John Keim, ESPN DC reporter, joined us in the first hour to educate us and fill us in on the Washington football team, the fine and sanctions levied against the team, as well as Daniel Snyder, him stepping down, his wife taking more of a up front and center position as the co-chief executive there. Daniel will not be in the day-to-day stuff until October, they say. He still will be a major player in picking the team's new name, as well as looking for a trying to put together another stadium. At the top of the second hour, we had Michael McCann, who is the legal analyst for Sportico, and he filled us in and talked to us a ton about the name, image, and likeness policy that went into play at midnight on July 1st for all collegiate athletes, student athletes, and what it looked like, how it could be manipulated, and really all the gloom and doom from the NCAA and everybody else, I don't think is warranted. College football, college basketball, any other sports, they're going to be exactly the same. It's just going to be able to afford these young student athletes more of an opportunity to profit off their name, image, and likeness, as well as maybe set up a future for them in the civilian sector, in the public sector after they're done playing, because 1% will go on and play professionally in some way, shape, or form. That's it. That's absolutely it. We just got done talking with Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network, their data analytics expert. She talked to us about the NIL. She talked to us about the Justin Fields situation in Chicago and how he may have been the best all-around quarterback, at least to a quarter of the scouts and head coaches she spoke to. She spoke to 16 of them, 8 of them. Half of them came back and said they had Justin Fields as their number 1 quarterback on the board. I had him as my number 2. I had Trevor Lawrence as number 1. I couldn't get past the fact of how fundamentally and technically sound he is, how he's been at the top and considered the best in the expectations that existed for him ever since he walked out of high school. And he did not meet them. Won a national championship in year 1. Played for a national championship in year 2. Played for the national semifinal in year 3. Okay? He never lost a regular season game. He has not lost a regular season game since before high school, or from like his junior year of high school or something like that. He better get ready for it. He got drafted by Jacksonville, number 1 overall. He's going to a team that is rebuilding or trying to find a new identity. They went out and hired a new coach in Urban Meyer, who has never had a sub 500 season. Not once in his entire coaching career at the collegiate level. He is going to hit that this year. He is going to be under 500. The closest he got was that 7-5 year in Florida. And what did he do immediately after that season? He resigned. He quit. He moved on. When things have gotten tough for Urban Meyer in terms of coaching, he has had a tendency to leave those situations. So we'll see how both of them do when they have to deal with adversity, like real adversity, like 6-11 type of adversity and getting hammered every week in the newspapers. I think Trevor Lawrence has the same kind of mindset and ability as Peyton Manning. I think they are very much alike. If you recall correctly, everybody, Peyton Manning was 3-13 his rookie year. Okay, he led the league in interceptions. And then I believe it was one of the biggest turnarounds ever. They went from 3-13 to 13-3. And he really changed the environment in Indianapolis. And I do think Trevor Lawrence has that ability. I do. The only problem is sometimes it's systemic. And when I say that, it's organizationally. Like there's an issue there. They went to an AFC championship a few years back, and then just absolutely imploded after that. They got rid of everybody who was great on that defense and have not been back since. They now have a new head coach, and they're hoping for greener pastures along the way. We'll see how that plays out. I love the Justin Fields pick. I think what the Bears did in making the decision to step away from Mitchell Trubisky after year 4, 2 playoff appearances, and Matt Nagy's and Ryan Pace's possible lame duck year, I think was aggressive and smart. They moved up and grabbed who I thought was the number 2 overall quarterback in this year's draft and have really put him in a position to be successful. Andy Dalton, who has had a very successful NFL career, played in has multiple playoff appearances with the Cincinnati Bengals, had a lone pickup year last year with the Dallas Cowboys, and now is in a system familiar to him. He can help Justin Fields along, and if Justin gets the go-ahead early, will be a great support for the young man out of Ohio State. I think it was a great pick for them. 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round, and all in the top 15. Not all of them are going to be successful. If I had to give you a couple examples, I'd say it's going to be Trey Lance and Mac Jones, simply because of where they went. 75% of it is about where you go. It really is. And you just went to 2 organizations that have showed they can compete. They've been at the top of the game for years and years and years in this league. Speaking about being at top of the league, not the same at the NBA level, right? Not the same as normal. Milwaukee Bucks, Atlanta Hawks, and the Phoenix Suns. We'll talk to Kevin Arnowitz, ESPN NBA writer, next to hear all things NBA playoffs. You're listening to The Rich Eisen Show. I'm Ryan Leaf. We'll be right back.